couple of smaller projects like Life in Roblox. God, I knew I shouldn't have mentioned that. Now I have to check it out. Mods. You love them, and you most probably love them. They exist for almost every single game, from the holy morning grey of Skyrim to the subject of today, Hotline Miami. Sure, it's kinda like comparing a hydrogen bomb to a coughing baby type of thing, but there's still some interesting things to be seen. I'll be showing some mods that I've tried, all of which I found from the fandom wiki. Yeah, I know, the mark of the beast that is, but it provided a good enough list of mods and links to them. But I am certain that there could be missing info and such, so I apologize in advance if I missed something. There are a couple, and I'll begin with those that you can straight up play in your browser. The first of which is Super Hot. As you would have probably guessed, Super Hotline Miami, made by Albator, is what happens when Superhot and Hotline Miami decide to get freaky on a Friday night, yeah, and pop out this 9 months later. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of Superhot, the gist of it is this: time only moves when you move. And this change pretty much transforms what would be another fast-paced reflex shooter into something more of a puzzle game, where it's not about being fast and reckless, but more so being slow and more methodical in your approaches to combat, unless you're a speedrunner, in which case, go wild. The game contains 7 levels, all slightly more difficult than the last one, and all playable straight from your browser. You can also download it straight to your PC if that's what you prefer, but you'll notice that you have 2 options for the versions you can download: the deluxe version and the older, not deluxe version of the game. The main difference is that, as of me making this video, the deluxe version doesn't have custom level support, while the older version has it. Not to mention that the newer version overall has more polish, so you're basically choosing between a more polished but slightly shorter experience and a slightly rougher but a theoretically limitless experience if you can find custom levels for you to play. Additionally, Super Hotline Miami is like a demo for Shootout Inc., a different game Albator is working on, although for now Shootout Inc. itself is a demo too. However, it already has more levels than Super Hotline Miami, 9 to be specific, as well as a tutorial level, a shooting range, and even a different game mode. That's pretty much it for Super Hotline Miami. It's still being developed, even if it's mostly under the name of Shootout Inc. Still, I say that you should keep an eye on the itch.io page for both projects, since there's still a good bit of fun. Another Hotline Miami-like game that you could straight up play on your browser is Fetch Me Their Soul! This is another mix of 2 pre-established games combined into one: Hotline Miami and COD Zombies. Made by MD Wade, Vestavia Hills is a slightly smaller project than the last one, but still as enjoyable. If you're unfamiliar with COD Zombies, unlikely considering the behemoth COD is, it's basically a survival game mode against zombies in a closed-up map. There's no win condition, it's only a matter of how long you can last. I'd say Vestavia mimics that survival aspect well enough, to the point where it's a good little time waster. It has most, if not all, the weapons from the first Hotline Miami, including some melee weapons, although there is a reserve ammo and stamina mechanic to encourage you to switch weapons and to not spam the melee weapons willy-nilly. You get the weapons via a mystery box in the lower part of the map. God, I love gambling. There's also a queue station in the center of it, and naturally, you can re-barricade your windows if the zombies have managed to get in. Additionally, you also start every run with a pack of motherfucking Newports that turn you into Neo when you smoke them. There's also a couple of different difficulties with some unique additions and omissions, and unique wave events within them. One example is if you start a run on hard or above, you literally start with only them hands, so you better start throwing them or you're gonna get run over. There's also behemoth waves that happen every 5 waves where a boss zombie spawns, and a couple of other specialty waves depending on the difficulty. And that's pretty much it for Vestavia Hills. It's noticeably smaller than Super Hotline Miami, but it's still some good fun. That's all of the mods that you can play straight up from your browser, and naturally, the meat of the scene isn't those mods that you have to download. All of the mods are either from GameJolt or itch.io, and it goes without saying, don't download stuff from unknown sources you don't trust. With that PSA over, the first slightly bigger mod is
Life. There's Roblox.
Yeah, this one. Made by Jared Cortez or Jared 1900 on GameJolt. Sure, I mentioned it in the Make Me Real video as a bit of a joke, but I still wanted to give it a fair chance, and a fair chance I did give. It's pretty much a slightly jankier Hotline Miami 1, but you're playing as a Roblox, you know, wearing a grey mask. I will give credit where it's due, most of the levels are not one-to-one copies of the one from the original game. There was legitimate effort put into at least making new levels, even if they're kinda jank. Your guy doesn't have any unique abilities, and you can't choose between other masks, but at least some of the sprites are custom made, to my knowledge, and they look alright, even if one of the melee weapons is a suggestive toy. You also eliminate downed opponents with the right click, as opposed to the spacebar, which is kinda strange, but you do get used to it. Another thing that's slightly bizarre as to why it happened is if you look far with the shift key, your character moves ever so slightly slower, or at least it feels like it. And yeah, there's not a whole lot more I can talk about life in Roblox. It's just Hotline Miami 1X Roblox game. It looks like a first attempt into game development, and it's not me bashing it. I legitimately think it's a first time game dev doing something, and that's why I cannot bash this a lot. The fact it's out is still something I like to celebrate, even if it's not mega high quality. Even mods like this mean more overall content for Hotline Miami, and I cannot argue with more content for a game I enjoy.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
Hotline Miami is made by Femme, and as the name will suggest, it's another mixed breed of Hotline Miami, but with Half-Life 2 this time around. First impressions I got were really interesting, because the mod page looks relatively clean and good, and I got to the comments, and it's like I've stumbled on an all-out flame war. So I was cautious when I checked it out, and so far I'm glad to say I have not experienced any issues and didn't really see where some of the unfounded hate came from. The game is pretty much a super abridged telling of the events of Half-Life 2, from you coming to City 17 to you attacking the Citadel, all happening in the span of 8 levels. The main gimmick here is that you can't use anything else apart from your trusty gravity gun. You can probably already tell what you're gonna use it for. It's really fun, and the environments do facilitate the use of the grav gun, and the first couple of levels are very well made and don't feel too hard or too easy. Additionally, they're all excellently textured and sprited. My main issue, and what kinda sapped my enjoyment, appears somewhat later in the game, and it's the issue that some of the levels are too long and that you have to complete them in one run. We're talking around 40 enemies in like the Nova Prospect level. Sure, it doesn't sound that bad at first, considering that you don't die from one hit, but here's the thing, shotgun enemies are added later in the game, and they can decimate you with one shot, since you can only tank like 2 to 3 bullets max. And that's the only thing that's grinding my gears about this game. Everything else is made pretty well, and I can only offer suggestions like the ability to use other weapons and to somehow break down levels into smaller pieces so you can have something resembling checkpoints. There are also custom levels, but I wouldn't hope for something made in the last 5 years. However, there's also a tutorial on how to use the level editor provided by the dev himself, which is really nice of him to do. For the time being, that's pretty much all for the mods that are just a mix of Hotline Miami and another franchise. There's still one more mod like that left, but it's a bit more special and I'll discuss it later. The first of the more original mods I'm gonna talk about is Tokyo 2041 was made by Tokyo Team, and is the first mod of this video that's not like a fan game, it's a purebred mod through and through. As of me writing this mod is only a demo, their words not mine. It's somewhat apparent in some places, since there's 2 instances that I know of where the game straight up just crashes. When you exit the first level, and only the first level through the car, and when you try to rebind your keys in the settings. Apart from those 2 issues, the game overall runs fine and looks really cool. The mod has 4 different levels with 3 different starting perks. The perks don't have a name, but are descriptive of what they give you. Silence Shotgun, Katana, Throwing Knives respectively. Silence Shotgun gives you a Silence Shotgun, with the added bonus of being able to pick up human shields with certain weapons. The perk is incredibly situational, but the shotgun itself is pretty good, so you're at least getting something worthwhile. The Katana is just a regular katana, with an added bonus of a faster movement speed when you use this perk. And lastly, Throwing Knives. It's the katana again, but instead of being able to throw the katana and pick up a different weapon, you have 3 throwing knives you can use for eliminating distant enemies, similar to Biker. Additionally, some enemies might be gone if you pick this, I suppose to make the level fairer if you end up running out of knives. One place where this is apparent is the very first level. The perks are all equally viable in my opinion. It's not like one option will be more of a liability than the other one. As for the levels, they're all pretty good. They're very fun to go through and incredibly well sprited. And I love the little detail that all levels are actually Blu-ray discs as opposed to VHS tapes. The soundtrack too is also incredibly fitting to the whole neo-Yakuza aesthetic Tokyo 2041 is going for. And unfortunately there's nothing else to talk about this mod as it's still in a beta demo stage, and I doubt it will ever come out of that considering the last ever update for this on their Twitter was 8 years ago. Nevertheless, this mod has a ton of potential and I'm still hoping that the devs will revisit the concept and flesh it out to the point where it's a full product. Kitsune Autumn 2032, I would just call it Kitsune for short, was developed by Revolver Alice. It's another demo, just like Tokyo 2041, although it's slightly more recent, with the latest update on the project being a video from its creator dating back to 2022. However, the latest build we have access to is from 2020. Right off the bat, this mod has insane amounts of effort put into it. From weapons to the levels to the main menu, this just reeks of quality. Although, just like I mentioned, it's still a demo, so there's only 4 levels for you to go through. They're all still very detailed and fun to play through. I have encountered only one issue, and that's in the 3rd level. If you kill a specific enemy, the game just straight up crashes. Other than that, the game is practically flawless from a gameplay standpoint. The level select is somewhat barren at the moment, but it's a demo right now, so if this were to finally come out, I'm sure this is going to be more detailed. The levels have unique environmental elements, like explosive barrels, and some of the weapons themselves have alternate fire modes, adding to the overall gameplay diversity. But like I mentioned already, this is still unfinished, and there isn't much to talk about apart from what I already said. It still looks incredible for something that's still work in progress. The last update about the mod was in 2022 on Revolver Alice's YouTube channel, and you know, it looks absolutely stunning. But it's been 3 years since the last gameplay update and showcase, and on their Blue Sky account they have mentioned that for now it's on hiatus. It goes without saying that you shouldn't harass them for putting Kitsune on hold. Check their other stuff if you're interested, but don't harass them about a mod for a game that's 13 years old, okay? Now, that's pretty much it from the main bulk of the mods I wanted to show, but there's still a few honorable mentions that are either A, too small in my opinion to talk a whole lot about, or B, too big to talk about in this video, so I'll just give a short overview now and I might review them on their own at a later date. Clearance Sale is a pretty short experience taking place in the Make Me Real universe during the 2nd game, and here you're just doing a couple of grocery store runs and chatting with the cashier. And then the store closes. Dreampunk, however, is the more interesting small project. It's still pretty short as it's just a survival horse shooter with 4 different characters and 4 different little arenas with unique upgrades after certain waves are cleared on said arenas. This project is kinda small for a reason, since it was for a game jam called Phone Jam 13, and it's technically a spin-off to the MMR universe, which I don't have a clue how this is similar to that, but I'm pretty sure someday we'll get our answer whenever the 3rd game comes out. An honorable mention to the honorable mentions here is Coffee Break by Asire again. This has a couple of non-canon what-if scenarios in the MMR universe, and it's structured more like a visual novel as opposed to a Hotline Miami mod. The art style and presentation look really neat in my opinion, and it's not super long, so if it tickles your fancy, be sure to check it out. Now, for the big ones. There's 2 that I want to outline here, the first being Midnight Mercenaries by German Peter. Yeah, the TF2/Doom YouTuber. This game is very long, 25 freaking levels, in which you play as the 9 TF2 classes with additional 9 different subclasses. There's also a whole story with level pre-planning,
the diamond,
and a non-linear storyline. This deserves its own video someday in the future for the amount of content it has. As for the other very big mod, it's a bit of a special one. One that has a lot of history related to the Hotline Miami modding scene and fandom. A story of love and forgetting. Midnight Animal, the mod that was supposed to rule them all. I won't talk much about this here, considering there's mountains and mountains of content and info to sift through. Perfect for a separate video in the future. And that's pretty much it for all playable mods. There are still some mods that are under development, the most notable one right now being 1900 Cult, but there's naturally some other projects being worked on like Shibuya Sukeban and Bloodlife. When they'll be released is up in the air really, hopefully it's soon rather than after 70 years. Thanks for watching. The amount of views and support on the last video has been surprising, but very welcome to say the least, and I appreciate all that watched that and perhaps the current vid. I'll try to make something new soon, but I am in university right now, so I am uncertain as to how frequently I'll be able to make stuff, but I'll still try to nonetheless. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a pleasant day.